Now we're gonna talk about the exchanges at the American Pawn Shop, the testimony of Kay Norris. But first, we're gonna listen to what Rich has to say about it and go from there.
I got to add to that because the people that did talk shit, I asked Darlie about them in person. And one of the favorite ones that I think are most interesting is the clerk at the pawn shop.
She was more than just a clerk. She worked in the jewelry department. Uh, she actually came from Zales and Bloomingdale's, and Macy's as a sales representative.
See, a lot of people said, "Oh, Darlie spent all the money. Darlie did this and that." Yeah, Darlie did like to shop, but Darlie shopped for deals. She
Right. These Kay Norris testified that she had met Darlie at least 50 times in there. At least 50 times.
knew how to shop. She knew how to get things at good prices and on clearance and different various things. And
I
she would
read that in the
good.
book, in the book Hush Little Babies. It goes into some of her history, and a lot of the stuff in that is you do not connect her to this type of crime.
Well,
Like, she talks
here's
about like trying to save a bunny rabbit that is it Darren's mum had or something like that, that she tried to phone the
well,
vet and try and
Yeah,
ask how to get
that's
it
in
to.
my that's
yeah.
in my first episode as well. I got that from that book.
Even
They compared her to a bunny rabbit. And if you look into Christopher Paul, is one of our non-supporters. He actually lives in the area, and he went to the gravesite one day, and he took a picture of two little bunnies playing around there, and he thought it was strange, but cool. But they say that Darlie was like a bunny. Well, Devin and Damon were like bunnies.
even better, Steve.
And she
Dar-
paid someone's mortgage, didn't she? Or
Yeah,
helped
she
oh
paid
pay
yeah,
someone's
someone's
mortgage who
yeah.
was
mortgage.
who
She had
had cancer or
cancer.
something like that. Yeah.
And she let Basha Javel borrow her credit card on numerous occasions, meaning Darlie let Basha borrow it. Now Basha said under testimony, "Oh, I paid all that back." Well, it doesn't matter. Darlie did loan her the credit card to get ahead on her bills. Of course, Basha was uh, psychologically ill and a full-fledged drug addict at the time. So let's not.
So if she was a full-fledged drug addict at the time and psychologically ill, why would Darlie be enabling her? That doesn't show very good character. Why would she have her around her kids? This is what you say this, but that's pure speculation. Now, Beja may have had some mental health counseling, but so did Darlie Key. And we heard in my last video from Tammy that Darlie Key didn't even do anything about it when Darlie was molested by her husband. So let's talk a little bit about psychologically ill. Show us on paper, Rich, what you have about Beja being mentally ill and a full-fledged drug addict.
Forget that. But I talked to Darlie in specific about when she went to the pawn shop because the pawn shop clerk, because Darlie did go to pawn shops. She was looking for deals on things, which you can get good deals at pawn shops if you know how to shop for things correctly. Darlie knew how to shop correctly. She knew how to save money and to get the best deals on things. And she went there, and I said, Darlie, this clerk, she testified that you whipped the ring at her and you were nasty and you were dressed inappropriately and everything else. She said, Rich, what that testimony didn't tell you is how nasty and rude she was to me.
Now, Kay Norris testified that everybody wanted to wait on Darlie when she got there. She testified that we make money off of her and they want the commission. So why would she be nasty and rude to her every single time? If you're nasty and rude to your customers, they're not going to come back. And, there's 14, 15 people worked in there. So why would she be nasty and rude to her if she's one of their best? If you look at Kay Norris's testimony, she was one of their favorite customers because she always bought something. And she said if she wanted something, she talked to Darren, and Darren, if Darren said, "No, why don't we just wait on that?" she would demand it. This is testimony on the stand.
And, if you go into any pawn shop, you got to remember the kind of people that they have to deal with in pawn shops.
Now look, he's going to go into all the people in the pawn shop now. Those are nasty people. No, they're salespeople, and they work basically on a commission. And he's gonna try and discredit a whole group of people and stick up for Darlie here.
So I'm not sure how that works in the United Kingdom, Tara and Steve, but Annie and Jamie, you would know how that works here in the United States. I'm not a big pawn shopper, but I have been in them, and when
you work in the concrete industry, I don't know how you wouldn't be in a pawn shop. But listen,
you go in them, that's a whole different kind of atmosphere than what you might see in your local Walmart.
Pawn shop people are very rough around the edge.
Pawn shop people are very rough around the edge. Is that where Darlie chose to shop at then, with people that are rough around the edge? I mean, if that woman was rude to her, why did she continue to go back?
Yes, they're very rough around the edge, and they don't give a shit. Okay, and the ones I've been in, and I have gone into some here in the Dallas area. Now, Darlie said, she goes, yeah, but they didn't tell you what she was doing to me. Of course not. They never do during trial.
And Richard Mosty didn't ask. So that means that Darlie didn't tell Richard Mosty, like she's telling Rich here. Oh, that woman was rude to her. Mosty never asked her about how they treated her. How did you treat Darlie? He went on about how, Darlie would toss things back at the counter. How she would throw things back. But he never asked, were you rude to her? No. Because he knew that they would say, no, we were never rude to her. Everyone wanted to wait on her. That's the direct testimony of Kay Norris. They all wanted to wait on her because they made money off of her. That's what they're there for. Shop till you drop Darlie.
Darlie said that she wanted to see a ring. She thought it looked interesting. And she said that the clerk started throwing a shit fit because she had to bend down and get the ring out of the.
The clerk's not going to throw a shit fit about having to bend down to get anything. They're hoping that she will buy it. This is what Darlie's telling him, though. But Darlie didn't tell her lawyer this, Rich, or he would have brought this up on cross-examination.
Out of the, whatever you want to call it, the shelf where you have to open a door, go in, pull the ring out, and then show it.
As a matter of fact, Kay Norris said that if she didn't want something, she'd always just toss it back on the counter every time.
Because evidently they didn't want to work, whatever.
Evidently they didn't want to work. They don't want this sales. But Kay Norris's testimony is different than what Rich is saying. They wanted to wait on Darlie. They're there because they make the sale and they get a commission. So if they didn't want to work, remember, she came from Bloomingdale's, Zales, and Macy's. She's been in retail all her life. At the time of her testimony, she was working for Glamour Shots. Where you doll yourself up like an entertainer or something and you get your pictures taken. She's a salesperson. Her background is in sales. But here, apparently they didn't want to work. Look how smug he looks.
So it seems like you see more and more of that every day. Nobody wants to do their job, but I'm not going to go there. So
you're not going to go there. You just went there. Nobody wants to do their job. Well, why wouldn't she quit?
So Darlie gets the ring, and she just didn't like her attitude. Darlie said she was smart mouthing her and getting nasty, and
smart mouthing her and getting nasty with her. Well, how come she didn't tell Richard Mosty this, and Richard Mosty had a chance to cross-examine her on that? Because he didn't. He was just more focused on, Darlie tossing things back on the counter.
Darlie got the ring and said, here, you can have it back. And kind of didn't whip it at her, but just threw it back on the counter and walked out the door.
Kay Norris says she did that every time she didn't want something. She'd just toss it on the counter like it was nothing.
Now, this woman testifies at trial that Darlie Lynn was dressed inappropriately. She was this and that.
She never said she was dressed inappropriately. She just told how she was dressed. She never said she was dressed inappropriately. Said she wore sweats, that she wouldn't make, that she never saw her making up, make herself up to come in there. But she never said she was dressed inappropriately. So here's Rich putting words in the trial testimony's mouth.
All kinds of stuff. Hell, you even got haters stating that Darlie was out walking around in a thong.
I don't believe Darlie would be out walking around in a thong.
And I'll never forget when me and Bonnie went in to talk to Darlie. I said, Darlie, did you ever do that? I never seen any. She was laughing so hard, the tears were running. Seriously. Bonnie, am I right about this? Bonnie was there. I don't know what Bonnie's doing, but anyway, she said, Rich, that is absolutely ridiculous. She said, she said, it's true. I had thongs, but I never left the house with a thong on. She goes, I don't know where these people get this information. She thought it was the funniest damn thing.
Well, think about the information that you're giving to your people. Now, you're bringing these people up on panels that know nothing about the case. Like the Steve-O guy. You're talking to yourselves. You don't allow any rebuttal. You don't accept the challenge. And see, that's where you make her look guilty when you do this. If you're so sure she's innocent, you wouldn't care who came to your channel. You wouldn't care what kind of argument they had. I don't. You can come to mine anytime you want. So can Kathy Ramsey, so can Bonnie, so can Mystery Maverick. But you don't. You fear the truth. You can come to our pages. We'll talk to you. We don't get nasty with you. You get nasty with us. You're here calling us the circle of hell. And you're two-faced, Rich, because you never talked to me like this personally. And we've talked for hours on the phone before. Hours. You told me specifically that you have your doubts. And you know this, and I know this. So you can lie all you want. I know what was. I should have recorded you. But I wasn't trying to go there with you. I just felt like you was a nice guy who just felt like she was innocent. And had no reason to record you. I should have, but I can go back through some of our emails.
In the world, actually. And getting to know Darlie.
There's that word, actually. Actually.
Never see her doing something like that. Now, as a younger girl, and a lot of young girls, they like to dress up slutty and this and that and everything else.
Saturday night.
Right. But I don't see Darlie going anywhere in a thong. I really don't. Now, of course, keep in mind, Darlie is 54 years old now. But back then, she was 26. But even to entertain that thought, I mean, Annie here has told the story repeatedly about the maggots.
Oh, I don't want to go in.
When Darlie Lynn was.
But you can see, let me see if I can find it real quick. I'll do it while I'm on here.
Hello and welcome to the Beach House.
Go to the YouTube channel, Beach House 34 Official. Trial transcript, part 73, the punishment phase. And you can see right here, Kay Norris's testimony and her cross-examination, where Mosty didn't ask her about how she was treated. He didn't ask, he didn't rebut it with how she was treating Darlie. So it looks to me like, they had every chance to. It's like, how did you treat her when she came in? Were you rude to her? Were you nasty? As a matter of fact, she says,
Darren, and she was like yelling at them, cussing at them across the pawn shop. I guess I have people that have got on to do you have any children? I have 3 boys. Where do you work? Now I work at Glamour Shots. Tell us what Glamour Shots is. It's you go in there and get fixed up and they take your picture. Kind of get dressed up like a Hollywood movie star or something and they take your picture. Yes, exactly. Very glamorous. Before that, did you work at the American Pawn Shop there in Garland? Yes, ma'am, I did. How long did you work at that pawn shop? I'll say altogether about 3.5 years. Okay. About when did you leave your employment there? December of 95. Did you work right until before Christmas? Yes, ma'am. Okay. In your 3.5 years at the pawn shop, did you have an occasion to get to know Darren and Darlie Routier? Yes, ma'am, I did. All right. About how often would they come in? At least once a week, maybe more. How many times in the 3.5 years that you worked there did you see Darren and Darlie? I can't tell you how many. At least over 50. Okay. Do you see Darlie Routier in the courtroom now? Yes, she is right there. Would you point her out and describe what she is wearing? She is over there. She has got a red and white dress on. Is she writing on her pad right now? Yes, yes, ma'am. When she would come in, who would she be with? Darren, most of the time. I have never seen her come in by herself. Okay. Did she ever come in with her children? I seen her children once. Okay. When her and her husband came into the shop, what were they looking for? Jewelry. What area of the pawn shop did you work in? I worked in jewelry. Were they customers of yours? Yes, ma'am. When the defendant would come into the shop, how would she appear? How would she be dressed? What did she look like? Can I be blunt? Sure. She was very tacky dressed. She never wore undergarments, no bra, everything was showing usually. She always wore a big t-shirt. I have seen her a couple of times in sweats, most of the time in shorts. But the way she was dressed, she always had all of her jewelry on. Her hair was never fixed. She never had any makeup on. I have never seen her clean up. Have you ever seen her look like that? No. Did you have the opportunity to wait on the defendant quite frequently? Oh, yes, ma'am. Have you worked in retail your whole life? Yes, ma'am. How did the defendant treat you? Very rude. Well, what do you mean? Well, she would ask to see a specific piece of jewelry, and I would go to hand it to her, and she would grab it from your hand. And she would look at her jewelry, and she was just so rude, and she would just like throw it back at you. She was never, passionate with you or however you say it. She was just very rude. Was this just one or two times, Miss Norris? No, ma'am. Every time she came in. In fact, she had like a nickname when she came in because there were two other people that worked. Mr. Mosty says, I'll object to speculation and hearsay. And the court says, well, if she knows what her nickname was in the establishment, Mr. Mosty says that would be hearsay and speculation in a place where Mrs. Routier is not present. How can that be cross examined? The court says, thank you very much. Overruled. Answer the question if you know. Miss Wallace then continues. Let me ask you this, Ms. Norris. When the defendant and your husband would come in, would you want to wait on her? Oh, yes, ma'am. We all wanted to wait on her. Why is that? Because she always bought something. I got commission off her. I didn't have anything against her. I made money off that woman. How often would she buy stuff? Almost every time she came in. What sort of things did Mrs. Routier like to look at? All of the big stuff. She knew what she wanted. She was very smart in what she wanted. She never looked at anything small. Did she pay for it? No, Darren did. Okay. Did Darren ever say, no, you can't have that? Oh, yes, ma'am. All right. What would happen then? She would get very, very verbal with him, cussing him, saying she wanted it now.
I encourage you to go to Beach House 34 Official, where she reads off the transcripts. You can hear Mosty's what he came back at her with. I'm not going to play it, but he never once asked. He never once asked, how did you treat Darlie? And you hear here that they wanted to wait on her. They made money off of her, and that's what they're there for. They're there to make money. And she'd worked there for 3.5 years. Dealt with them 50 times, at least. So chew on that, Rich. Straight from the transcripts.